All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Talkin' Shop with Outlier Firefighters. I am Alex Tanner. I'm here with Ryan Constantino of Shield 23, and we're going to be talking a lot about his foundation and whatever else we can get into. Ryan and I have been kind of in the same area for a while, actually,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we seem to connect and then like disconnect. And connect. It's the weirdest thing. This is going to be pretty cool for both of us to talk to each other. So, Ryan, why don't you start off? Introduce yourself, let everyone know who you are, and go from there.
yeah. So my name is Ryan Constantino. I'm the first vice president of the Shield 23 Foundation, also co-founder. I founded it with my mother, Shannon. I am currently a full-time firefighter for the Wakanda Fire District, and I've kind of hopped around with my career over the last 10 years. I just had my 10-year anniversary, starting volunteer and then working, part-time, then contract, then back to full-time, part-time, and then finally got hired full-time. So it's been a process, but I've been full-time now for just over 3 years. So really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ryan is next door to me. As hilarious as that is, uh,
Yeah.
we're literally our two districts meet up together. So
Yeah, we used to work together back in Antioch,
we
back what
did.
was it, 14, 15, around then.
Yeah.
And then yeah, we worked together there, and then it seemed like you said we disconnected for a little bit after I left on a different contract. And then we end up meeting up with each other randomly at the Honor Guard convention. I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, you're here." It was just a
I
kind of
know.
funny thing connecting again, and then here we are.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, we're from Illinois. If you're not from Illinois, which I imagine most people are that are listening now, but uh, uh, the AFFI has an honor guard, and Ryan and I were inducted last year, or no, the year before. Yeah,
Year before.
year before.
Hmm.
Coincidentally, like he's saying, at the same time. So it's just kind of interesting how those things happen. So, keeping with our kind of intro questions, Ryan. So, what was your first exposure to the fire service?
So my first exposure, my father was a firefighter paramedic for Gurnee for 20 years um, prior to him passing. So I grew up in the fire service, in and out of the firehouse as a kid. My dad kept, the fire service portion of it kind of outside. He didn't really tell us about calls or anything like that, but very much included us on the family portion of the fire service. And that was extremely, extremely important to him. Gurnee back in probably the early 2000s, the fire department that is was extremely close knit. We all would go together on a lot of different things. All the kids would hang out together. So that was my exposure to the fire service. Especially in the beginning, was just the family aspect of it, and that was just great. And that was amazing. And after my dad passed away, that family kind of continued, and I was like, wow, like there are so many people that went to my dad's funeral and really kind of took care of us after he passed. And he was like, I just really wanted to be part of that. So that's why I joined. I went to the tech campus in high school. I did firefighting my junior year of high school, and then I did my EMT license my senior year. And then I actually got hired volunteer on a fire department when I was still 17 years old. So I started my fire service career very, very young, thankfully, because I had that exposure with my dad.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if you know this either, and I don't think we've ever talked about. My dad also started in Gurnee as a
Yep.
POC, and
Yeah.
my uncle was one of the original full timers
Hmm.
who retired. He retired more than a couple years ago now. But yeah, another
Yeah.
weird connection. Like
Yeah. It is.
it's funny how that happens. So would you say that you said your dad he didn't talk about like calls and stuff at home necessarily, but you did have exposure and you were in the firehouse. Did you learn about like values and culture at a younger age when you were visiting? Do you think that some of that
Oh,
carried over
absolutely.
into your life?
So my dad was definitely a traditional, firefighter. That was something that he definitely believed in, pride and tradition within the fire service, and that's why he was actually one of the honor guard founders at Gurnee. So back in, gosh, that would have been mid 90s. I don't even know when that would have been. I know he joined the AFFI honor guard in 99. And that pride and ownership and tradition, that was stuff that was really ingrained into myself and my sister. Me joining the fire service. My sister, she actually was a police officer for a short amount of time. She's in the military currently, and she's married to a police officer herself. So that sense of pride and duty and honor, it really resonated with us definitely growing up.
No, that's awesome. I think that's one of the things I'm kind of finding out is a lot of us, whether it was a direct, like parent or indirect, right? A cousin, a neighbor. We a lot of people that get into public safety and public service, I guess, if you will, are exposed to that much younger, and I think that those things resonate. I've been trying to pull it out of my brothers, and I know it's a segue. Because I have two brothers that aren't in a fire service or in any sort of public safety or public service, and I was curious what values they got moving in, and I think they kind of did develop like some of the hard work, some of those kinds of things, right? And unknowingly just being around the fire station. So it's pretty cool to hear, you know, again, I'm a second gen, you're a second gen, and it's cool to hear that those things resonate and you move on to the next thing, and you have core values that come from that from when you were a teenager. You don't even realize it, right? So, you said big into tradition, your father was, and all those other things. So, what are some of like the biggest traditional values you think that he's passed to you that you continue believing in and having part of you?
Well, definitely just, what this fire service means and what it means to serve and protect. Definitely feel like that's, resonated. I even remember growing up, and he instilled a lot of history. Like, I'm a huge history, I guess, nerd, I guess you could say. And growing up, we watched all types of stuff like Band of Brothers, or even like, you can say like 300 and stuff like that. That those are the type of things that, really instilled, the pride and, about what you're doing. Make sure that you enjoy what you're doing before you pick that as a career. And that was a big thing for him. And I remember I was like 10 years old, and he's like, do you want to be a firefighter? And he was like, I said I had no idea, because there were a lot of other options. I always wanted to be like a scuba diver, and kind of be outside and do that kind of stuff. And he's like, well, if you do decide to be a firefighter, and I'm not going to persuade you either way, but if you do it, make sure that you give it 120%, because if you don't, then this job's going to eat you up, because there's a lot of stuff that we see and do, that other jobs don't have. And that prideful aspect of where you work, and how you do your job, definitely aids in the fact of what we see and how dangerous the job is, and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So, that's a little bit about Ryan, his background, and where he comes from, and what he is, and where he's going, right? And we're going to get into talking about Shield 23. The first thing I'm going to do here, though, I'm going to put your website up and pin it in our chat here. So www.shield23foundation.org, right?
That's correct.
And while I'm doing that, why don't you explain to the listeners here what it is?
Yeah, so the Shield 23 Foundation is a foundation that raises funds for and gives funds to firefighters with cancer, in honor of my late father, Russ Constantino, who passed away in 2009. We divide our mission statement up into three different things. The first one is awareness, education, and peer support. Because it's important to learn a little bit more about it. Because I remember when I first started in the fire service, there was no education about cancer at all. People rarely wash their gear. I don't even think we had an extractor at the first department that I worked at. So this is all relatively new. Even the newest studies that have been coming out, the first study that I read came out in 2017. So this is all brand new stuff to the fire service. So we would just want to make sure that we educate everybody, and then let people know and understand that they're not the first people going through this, and it gets better. And that's where we allowed kind of that peer support aspect to come through. And then obviously our second mission is obviously fundraising. We want to make sure that we can raise as much funds for these firefighters and their families, whether it's for travel expenses, or making sure that their kids are having a relatively normal life, because that was a big thing in my personal you know, experience is that I was a kid of a firefighter that had cancer before I was the firefighter. So that, that's a big mission that I try to help out with, making sure that the kids are experiencing a relatively normal thing of continuing sports or something like that. And then the last one is making sure that we're gifting the firefighters that truly need it and helping them out in every way possible.
Yeah, I mean, an incredible mission, right? And absolutely, I can't think of any other, at least especially in our area, organizations that exist in the same way that you guys do in terms of the gifting and that whole process. I mean, it's truly incredible. So, we're going to talk about how many people you help, the numbers, and those kinds of things later. But let's kind of walk through. So, how did you start? How did you guys grow and develop? And I guess what's the story? How did Shield 23 come to be?
Yeah, so I can't really tell that story without telling the story of about my dad first. He, like I said before, he was a Gurney firefighter for roughly 20 years. Um, he started a contract at Gurney in '99, and then ended up getting full time in '92, I believe it was, and then was the quartermaster most of the time. And at Gurney, this was before any of the cancer studies and stuff like that. They had a small little room for the quartermaster, for, storing extra gear and stuff like that. And rarely did you clean the gear back then. It was a sense of pride and ownership that how many fires you went to, how much soot you could really get on your gear. And he was exposed to that on a regular basis. A typical firefighter, they only put on their gear a few times, whether they're going on calls or training or whatever, and then it goes either next to the rig or in their locker. Well, my dad, he was he did a lot of the repairs on the gear himself. He did all that kind of stuff in that tiny little enclosed space. So the gear was off gassing. He was getting all the soot on his hands all the time. Then he would go eat, and then he would ingest it. So he had a little bit more of an exposure than anybody else. And then he ended up getting coincidentally sick in I think it was roughly 2006. He ended up getting brain cancer. And it was a pretty aggressive brain cancer. He had brain cancer for 3 years, and it affected all different types of stuff. And actually, the reason we found out about it was he came home from shift one day, and I was the only one home, and I think I was 9 years old, and he had a grand mal seizure at home. So and he ended up going into status epilepticus, having multiple seizures back to back to back, and he ended up completely forgetting who he was, how to speak, how to walk, and he had to relearn all those different things. So it was a tough ride for us. So in that process, the Gurney Fire Department really came together and rallied behind us and our family, and they put on this massive fundraiser, at Key Lime Cove, and they ended up raising thousands of dollars for our family, because we lost my dad's income, and at the time when you're put on FMLA, your family is actually kicked off of the insurance. So then we had to pay for all of our own insurances. So as you can imagine, with medical bills kind of piling up, it was quite an expense, and then losing that income as well. So we almost lost our house, and if it wasn't for the Gurney Fire Department coming together and really helping us out, I would be in a very, very different set of circumstances. So kind of now I can start talking about why we formed the foundation is because of all of that help that we received back in 2018. My mom and I kind of really sat down, and we were like, you know what? I think it's time to, because it was about 9 years after my dad had passed, and we were like, I think it's time to start giving back to what the fire service gave us. And we thought that it was just going to be a small little foundation, like we would only maybe raise $1,000 here, $1,000 there, and we would only give it out maybe once or twice a year. And then we really started to realize, once we founded the foundation, that the demand was so much higher.
Yeah, I mean, I think not the two brothers from Chicago, but the last two honor guard deployments we had were cancer-related death. I mean, it's obviously it's a huge issue right now, even from the PFAS in gear. That's becoming another bigger study that they're putting together, and the IFF's trying to do a lot with that. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I think every single person in the fire service now knows somebody or is connected to somebody that's had some sort of occupational cancer, right?
Yeah, I mean, what's crazy is they first started doing these studies. Originally, it was back in like the 1950s, and then they didn't release anything. They were just compiling data for roughly 50 to 60 years. And the first like true study that came out was in 2017 by the IAFF, and they were saying that 65% of all the firefighter deaths that have happened in that time frame were cancer related. So we went from thinking cardiac was the number one killer of firefighters to now all of a sudden cardiac seems like it's such a small little slice of the pie. It's only like 10% now, where we thought cardiac was like 60%. Now we're realizing that cancer is really the killer of firefighters. It's up to that 65%. And if you actually compile the data from just the last few years, from 2017 till now, they're saying 75% of all firefighters, dying in the line of duty are cancer related. And if you go even further into it, last year in 2022, 348 of the 469 members that were added to the Honor Guard Memorial in Colorado Springs, 348 of those members were cancer-related deaths. So it's unbelievable how many firefighters, and that's only of what we know of and the ones that are documented. I'm sure that there are even more that are undocumented, that are out there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There are. So back to your foundation and getting that started. So you had a group of friends, your mom. Like, how did you go about developing, raising money, and then how has that grown? Over the last couple years, right?
Yeah, so like I said, when we first started, we thought that maybe we would just do like a pub crawl or two a year, and that would just raise enough money to help out the firefighters that we thought would need it. And we quickly realized, I think our first year, we didn't gift any money out, but then our second year, we gave out $9,000, I want to say. And that was a lot more than that $2,000 that I was originally looking at. I was like, you know what, we're really going to need to start raising some more money. So, and that was probably the height of COVID at that point, because it was in our second year of the foundation. So then we're scrambling, trying to figure out how to fundraise not in person. So that was a huge obstacle to kind of figure out in the very beginning, was during the shutdown of everything, trying to fundraise, because firefighters were in that high risk category of getting COVID and passing away if they had cancer. So we had a lot of funds that were going out the door with really no fundraising at the time. So we sell different types of merchandise. We have our sweatshirts, hats, different T-shirts, mugs, shaker bottles, all that kind of stuff. And that's what really held us through majority of that pandemic. People graciously buying those items and helping the firefighters that way. Now we actually have a golf outing coming up on August 4th. The registration should go live in another week or so. So we're really excited about that. And then this is going to be our first year of, we're calling it the recognition celebration. That'll happen on November 9th of this year. It'll be a big concert, as well as raffles, and it'll be a really, really awesome time. We're really excited for that. So hopefully we raise a lot of money doing that. And then moving forward, we're really excited about potential partnerships and doing some really big things in the future. So we'll leave it at that, but we're really excited for what could be coming next year.
That's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. So, and before we get too far away, I guess if anybody's listening, or they're live here, how can they donate? How can they just go to your website? What's the process if they just wanted to donate?
If they just wanted to donate, they can go to our website at shield23foundation.org. There's a donate tab at the very top. You can do it that way. If there are any firefighters listening, we actually offer a fire service group membership, which actually benefits. It's a huge benefit to us as firefighters. We only offer it to fire department groups. It unfortunately at this time it doesn't help individual firefighters, but for $23 a year per firefighter on the roster, it's essentially an added insurance policy. If you were to get diagnosed with cancer, would gain priority gifting status over everybody else. And then, if God forbid you would pass away from cancer, your family would receive a death benefit on behalf of the Shield 23 Foundation for just $23 a year.
Well, yeah. Please, again, if you're live, check out their website. If you are not live and you're listening in later, shield23foundation.org. Check them out and help support an amazing cause for sure. So, with that support, so how much have you been able to gift? Where have you been gifting? What reach do you guys have now?
We have gifted, or we have anticipated gifting through the end of the year of right around $100,000 gifted. To this point, it's just over $80,000 to firefighters with cancer. And as you could probably tell, that's on a scaled from year to year. So we've only been gifting for about 4 years, but in the last year and a half, we've actually gifted close to $50,000 to firefighters with cancer. So as you can probably tell, we've grown pretty quickly over the last few years, and being able to do so with our different fundraising. And so far we've gifted to multiple different states. We give priority gifting to the state of Illinois. If they find us on our website or any other means of finding us, we've also gifted to Texas, Georgia, Wisconsin, and the state of New York.
And so, what's the process for either getting a hold of you guys, requesting help, and then how do you guys give the donations? How do you give the gifts to those that need them?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So on our website, you can go to request a gifting, and it's a step-by-step process. Typically, we ask a liaison to act, in between the family and us. We have a gifting committee that meets together and kind of talks about the different ranges of money that you could possibly receive depending on your circumstance. Whether that's I'll talk in kind of specifics here, but the Itasca firefighter Frank Nunez that passed away earlier this year, we had been helping him out for the past probably year and a half, almost 2 years prior to his passing. And he had a pretty special circumstance where he had to travel to Texas and Tennessee for his treatments. So as you can probably tell, that can rack up, a significant amount of money. So that was all, brought to the table when trying to determine how much money to gift to somebody, whether they deserve more or less, how many kids they have, that's all factored into that. So like I said, we have a liaison that will talk with the gifting committee, just to kind of do the day-to-day stuff. And we only really ask for 2 forms, a form that you're currently employed by a firefighter or had to retire due to the treatments. And then the second thing is just a note from your doctor with your diagnosis. That's all we really need.
Well, yeah. And then you guys, how do you then present to people? Is it done through their organization? Is it done through kind of you guys coming out? How?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have really prided ourselves on doing every single gifting in person. So on those out-of-state giftings, we've always sent a representative out, whether it's the president or myself, who's my mom, by the way. The president's my mom. We would fly out to that state or wherever it is in Illinois. We've traveled down to the very southern tip of Illinois. We've traveled up to Wisconsin. So we've traveled kind of all over the place to make sure that we're doing these gifts in person, because not only do we care about the monetary value of the giftings, but we want to make sure that they are doing okay emotionally as well. And it's always good to talk to them and see how they're doing, and put a face behind things. I'm not a big fan of just sending a check, because anybody can just send a check. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah, right. I think that's we're firefighters. I mean, that's what we do. We're personal. We have a family connection, right? That's the fire service. I commend that. I mean, that's an incredible way to do that, and that's a pretty big undertaking too for you guys to come out and personally do that. And those things have value. Those little details, right, about making a
hmm
personal connection. There's so much involved with those things, but it really resonates, I think, that much more. So, talk about like your board. So everybody that's within your Shield 23 in your organization, what are the backgrounds? Where do they come from? How did you guys find each other? Because you started with family, but then you grew that out.
Absolutely. So the president's my mom. She was obviously married to my father, high school sweethearts. My father passed away when he was 46. I was 14. My sister was 10. So she really had a lot to deal with, and she understands being the spouse of a firefighter with cancer, and then also being the mother of a firefighter. She just understands a lot. I'm the first vice president. I'm a firefighter myself, like we talked about before. My sister, she is the second vice president. She was a police officer. She is currently a gosh, I can't think of it right now. Just under a lawyer, a
Oh,
paralegal.
yes.
So she's a paralegal at this time, and she's actually married to a police officer herself. Our first director, she is a firefighter for Itasca Fire Protection District. Her husband actually passed away from cancer. He was a Rosemont firefighter. And then she also is on the same department that Frank Nunez was on. So she knows firsthand what it's like to, deal with cancer within the fire service. She's now dealt with it twice, unfortunately. And then our second director, her name's Tracy. She has, a large background in restaurants and kind of fundraising and stuff like that. And then our treasurer, he was actually on the pension board. He's a retired Gurney battalion chief, John Skillman. He was on the pension board and actually helped grant my father's pension to my mother. So he fought many different ways, because cancer in the fire service was really not known back then, and he was able to kind of connect the dots and do a lot of research back then. So we really owe him a lot. And then his wife is also on the board. She is a nurse practitioner, so she has extensive knowledge within the healthcare community.
Wow, that's a well-rounded. I mean, group from all sorts of different backgrounds. That's pretty awesome. Uh, that you guys kind of all found each other in that way. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
our board is amazing. We really do a lot of work, and it's completely volunteer. And these guys really come together, and we ask a lot from them. So it's impressive to see the work that we're all able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and so from that, you guys, you're continuing to grow. You're continuing to expand into other areas, and you've got fundraisers and all these new things happening, and it's really incredible. And the growth that's coming from you guys. I mean, it's 2018 you started, and I mean, it's truly remarkable how quick you guys have grown. And I mean, how could you not, right? With the message that you guys are bringing, with the help that you're bringing, the support, it's all wonderful things. So we were talking before we went live, and I really, I want you to share the story of your mother. I really, what we were talking about before, I'll say a little, and then please, elaborate, because she's your mom. She's
Absolutely.
not my mom. But when we got sworn in for the honor guard, she got up and spoke, and it totally resonated with me that the 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 trauma that your mom has gone through, and she's still connected to the fire service, and she's still keeping with that mission of helping people as for everything that she had gone through, and elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. So my mom and dad, they were high school sweethearts. They met in high school, dated. Um, she's a certified therapist, so she specializes in trauma, PTSD, and family services. So she helps counsel and do therapy and stuff like that. But it's unbelievable what she's been able to do with us as kids. So I guess we could backtrack a little bit. My dad gets diagnosed at 42, 43 years old, and she's only 41 years old, and she doesn't really know what's next. He ends up passing away 3 years later. She has a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old at home now that she has to work full time. She has to take care of both of us now, doing both jobs as mom and dad. And then also while dealing with the grief, all on her own. And she was a rock star. She never really showed any of that. She handled everything amazingly. And then I guess we could talk about it a little bit later, but I joined the fire service, and then I am on a call and I end up getting hurt, and I'm intubated for 24 hours, and she has to then go through it all over again. And she has to deal with the potential of losing a son, losing a husband, and then fast forward to the foundation as well. She has to kind of almost relive the trauma of my dad's cancer with everybody that she sees. And it can be really hard, but she turns it, she flips a switch, and she uses that almost like grief and everything to help as many people as possible. And believe me, if she was a firefighter, she'd kick in doors, and really she does an amazing job. It's unbelievable. She is the biggest pusher and mover within the foundation. She gets things done.
Yeah, you said she's a tank. I mean,
She is.
it's yeah, it's incredible. Most people would, and it's okay, but most people would turn away and not want to be connected anymore after such, traumatic things happening. And she's right in there, and that
Mhm.
really, I mean, it's amazing. And your mom needs to be commended for what she's doing and what she's part of and what you guys are doing. From what your family went through, I can't even imagine. I really can't. I know there's been a couple, recent, deaths from cancer shortly after retirement in our area.
Mhm.
And, I think the same thing about my dad. Like and he's gone and done, I think there's that blood test. And we could talk about ways to protect yourself and scan
Mhm.
in a minute, but
Mhm.
like he's tried to go through those things and keep a healthy
Yeah,
lifestyle because
some of
of
those
that.
statistics are insane. So we've helped out 30 firefighters within the state of Illinois, and like I said, around the United States, and unfortunately, 7 of those firefighters have passed. That's almost 25% of the people that we've helped. That's not even the firefighters that we didn't know about in our area, or don't necessarily want to accept help, because we always run into firefighters that it's just part of the job. It's one of those things that you accept potentially falling through a floor or breaking a leg, or getting hurt on the job, something like that, but you don't really expect to get cancer and pass away. It's one of those slow things that you don't necessarily think about. So it's sometimes it can be hard to convince those firefighters that, hey, you can kind of accept help from your family here, because we're all here doing and helping each other out. So but yeah, it's 7 firefighters in the last few years. It's been tough on us all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a shock to the system, and like you said, it's everywhere, and it's happening everywhere, but it still hits
Mhm.
us that much harder
Yeah, and
because
the youngest firefighter being 34 years old that passed away.
yeah, I mean that's and I mean I just turned 33, so
Yeah.
I mean that's right there. What I want to do. So Ryan is a pro, man. He's got notes. He's got stats for you guys, and I have no way to casually segue into those stats other than just like share them. Share the information that you've got, and help bring awareness to some of those things, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could start off with our foundation's kind of statistics. Like I said, we've helped out 30 different firefighters. Majority of those being in the state of Illinois. I'd probably say 26 or 25 of those being in the state of Illinois. Relatively close, Lake Cook, Kendall, McHenry County. And then we've also ventured out to, some other counties, very, southern counties of the state. 7 of those firefighters have passed away, like we said. The youngest passed at 34. Our youngest firefighter that we've gifted that was diagnosed with cancer, 25 years old. So it can kind of hit really at any age. We're exposed to all different types of carcinogens our within our job. And you touched on the PFAS before, the PFASs that are in our turnout gear, but realistically those are kind of in everything. They're in your table that you're sitting at, on your phone, on your laptop, and they're actually kind of harmless until they get heated up. And once they're heated up, that's when they start off gassing, and that's when it can be absorbed into your skin. And you start talking about the superhighways of the blood vessels within your body. The most exposed areas that you have are your wrists, which all that's there to cover your wrists is the gauntlets of your turnout gear. And most guys don't even put on their gauntlets; they just throw their gloves on. Then you got your neck. Which the only thing protecting your neck is a thin piece of Nomex from your hood, and then your another area that's a superhighway is your groin area. And whenever your turnout coat kind of flaps up, that can all be absorbed into your groin. And those are your major blood vessels in your body that kind of transport all those carcinogens to the rest of your body.
I saw something the other day, and I changed, and I'm always looking to make sure that I'm comfortable changing things. So, unrelated to cancer, I changed the way I masked up a couple years ago. I bought into doing with gloves on, and it's been awesome. And I'll never look back. I'm going to do it forever now, and I've gotten much better at it. But one of the things I saw, and it was talking, for us, testicular cancer. Right,
Mm-hmm.
like you're talking about your groin, it's higher, and I don't know the numbers. I'm ignorant to it. However, but you're at a higher risk obviously as a firefighter, and I've for my whole career. So I'm 13 years 13 years volunteer up to full time now. And day one of the academy, I put my Nomex hood in between my legs on my
Mm-hmm.
turnout coat, and that's how I've dressed up the entire time. And
Well, that's what they ingrained in you, because
right,
I went to NIPSTA for my academy. That's how they purposely have you fold everything in a specific way, very much like boot camp, and that's where they want you to put it every
yeah,
single time because it's neat, very easy to carry, stuff like that. So all those things are kind of ingrained in you when you're young, and then you just kind of do it the rest of your career. So exactly what you're saying. You shouldn't be putting your Nomex, in your groin area, because it's,
yeah.
like I said, it's right. There's that super highway. And actually, speaking of, so women are actually at a way higher increase of cancer than us as men, just because of the structure of their body. They have a lot more fatty tissues in their breasts and everywhere else. So they're actually between the ages of 40 and 50. They have a 6-time higher breast cancer rate than the national average. 6 times. That was an insane stat to me that I saw.
That is wow. And uh, or I was saying with my turnout coat. I'm sorry, with my hood, right? Uh, I have a lieutenant who he does our turnout gear, and he's very much into researching and cancer prevention, and he's pretty forward thinking about a lot of those things. So he'll hang his coat on the handrail, right, and he'll put his Nomex and hang that on his coat on the outside, and that's part of his mask up. I was scrolling through Facebook the other day and saw another alternative to that where you would put your Nomex in your boot,
Hmm.
so it's not over the fabric of your groin, and that's kind of like the transition that I'm going to now, and I've made that change to try to help do those things. So there's we'll talk about big things you can do, but there's also little things I think that you can do
Mm-hmm.
to just kind of change the way you think about stuff and preventing things. Like you said, you're taught something, and then for 20 something years you do it the same way. Well, if you could have caught in the middle of that and changed, and spared yourself another 15 to 20 years of doing something maybe that isn't beneficial to you, that's a good thing to do and think about. So
Yeah, we're definitely creatures of habit within the fire service. I know some, talking about Nomex hoods, I know some departments out there, they actually are um, given 3 sets of hoods, and then they're all different colors, and the different colors represent the week that they're supposed to be wearing it. So,
oh,
you know, the first week is red, the second week is black, the third week is white or something like that. And they're told to rotate those hoods and make sure that they wash them. And if they don't see the red hood, or whatever on your gear that day, then you know that you're not compliant or something like that. And I don't know what it is, but that was what in the video that I saw, that they're rotating their gear, and preventing what you could have an
Yeah.
exposure wise.
We do 3 hoods, and ours are particulate blocking. And
Oh, very nice. Yeah,
yeah,
the particular ones are really nice.
yeah, there was a learning curve, and firemen complain about everything, but like there was a little bit of difficulty, I think, for some people hearing through them because they were thick or
Mhm.
something. I didn't buy into that. I really felt like I could hear just fine. There's a little bit of like a crinkly to it because of
Yeah.
that layer, but really, like, I don't know. I mean, it you can't really tell the difference. But we do the 3, so you have one on you. You have one in your mask bag that's extra, right? So if you go on a call, you can switch it out. And then you have one back at the house. So basically, if it goes in and it's exposed to any sort of IDLH or smoke, that hood's gone when you're done, right? It gets taken out of service. You get a fresh, clean hood, which you should have it on, with your stuff to be able to switch out on scene. So, like, let's say you leave and do rehab, and then you're going to go back and do overhaul. You would switch hoods on scene, and then
Mhm.
you'd come back to the station, and then you have a fresh one. So when you wash the other 2, and that's our rotation. So that was one
Yeah,
of the
that's
things we were
that's
trying
that's
to
really
do.
smart. Yeah, that's really smart.
But I understand there are organizations that can't afford those things, but you could still try to at least implement those things as best you can, right? And
Absolutely. And it really goes back to making sure that take care of your body, take care of, your equipment, just like you take care of your tools and, your engine or your truck. Make sure that, you're always ready. And at the end of the day, you can't do your job without you.
yeah,
So you make sure that you're protected before anything else.
yeah. I mean, Andy Fredericks would say it's my saw, right? It's my saw. It's your life. It's your body. It's your gear, right? You can do things and take ownership of that. In the same mentality, we're firefighters. That's what we do, right? What are some other prevention things like on scene? What could you do? Back at the station, what are some other cancer prevention routines that you can get into?
Absolutely. So here in the state of Illinois, there's actually a MABUS program where you can get decon buckets for free through MABUS. So you can receive these decon buckets. They come with like hose attachments and nozzle, and, soap, a decon scrub brush, and stuff like that. And really, every department should get into doing some gross decon while on scene, whether that's just spraying off your gear after a structure fire, and really getting off most of those particulates as you possibly can. And, I'm not a big proponent of clean cabs myself, just because I like to be ready when we go to a fire. But realistically, when you're going home from a fire, you should be taking off your gear, putting it into a trash bag or something like that. Because if you bring that in, a lot of our cushions, they're all porous, inside of the rig, so it just absorbs all those carcinogens. And then majority of the calls that we go on are EMS calls, so you're sitting in all the carcinogens in your regular clothes at that point. You're not always wearing your turnout gear, so we have to be cognizant of that. And then also, when you're on scene, a really good thing that we should be getting into, there was a study done, for overhaul, for instance, that the stuff that's burning actually is off gassing for 3 days after the fire. So it should be, we should be wearing our masks a lot longer, if not the whole time that we're there doing overhaul, cleaning things out, salvage, all that type of stuff. We should realistically be wearing our air masks.
Yeah, I mean, even if there's no, I know a lot of departments, mine, but more so than mine, the policies are just based on CO parts per million, right?
Exactly.
It's not based on anything else. So for us, it's 50 parts per million or 30 with visible smoke, and like that doesn't cover what you're talking about, off gassing, things that you can't detect, particulates. Like you're not monitoring for any of that stuff, and we showed up to the party. We might as well use the stuff that you brought, right?
Hmm.
Wearing your air pack, is it really a hindrance for you to pull ceiling and wear an air pack? It's a mindset shift that people have to have, right? And there's value to it, and it's an immeasurable thing, right? You can't you can't measure what's
With
killing
what we
us
have.
with what we
Yeah,
have, right? Your
exactly.
basic CO monitor or your 4 gas or 5 gas, it's not going to pick up what we're concerned about, right?
Exactly. It only picks up flammable ranges.
Yeah,
So, it might detect that there's something there, but it only tells you the flammable range of that item. So, you could be inhaling a lot of bad stuff still.
yeah. Uh, what are some recommendations then? Uh, come out, right? You did your fun stuff. You put the fire out. Now we're gonna come out. We're gonna start cleaning up. We're gonna do some overhaul. Maybe start packing up, heading home. Right? You mentioned the trash bags. What are some other things that you can do on scene?
Yeah, so yeah, just on scene, it's really big to do that gross decon. And just taking care of your guys, rotating each other out, making sure you go to rehab and get evaluated. And then also, they have face wipes in those Mavis buckets. You can use those face wipes to make sure you try and get as much soot and everything off your face, because the studies are showing that rubbing area, like right along your cheeks and kind of along your jaw, it doesn't basically, how, because you're sweating and soot and everything still gets underneath your mask. It's being absorbed in through your cheeks and through your chin. And I can't tell you, every fire that I've ever been to, I'm still, even though I'm wearing my air mask, I still got black stuff coming out of my nose. So just making sure you're cleaning up after yourself, using those face wipes, use them on your hands and your wrists. And then when you get back to the station, keep those change of quarters companies for a little bit longer. Make sure you take a shower, do your decon, cleaning your hose and all that stuff. I understand, depending on, what everybody's got going on, maybe it's not possible to keep those change of quarters companies as long as you would like, but try and keep them just a tad bit longer. Make sure that you're able to put your guys back in service, as well as putting your tools and everything else back in service.
Yeah, I mean, what's ironic about that is COVID came through, right? And we had all these policies, and one of ours was if you were exposed to a COVID patient, you'd come back and you'd be out of service and you'd shower.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like it's far fetched for an administration to understand that. That you come back from a fire, the guy's got to clean up, they got to shower, they got to get back in service, and they got to take care of it sooner than later, right? So that exposure is gone, and or not gone, but you know what I mean. You're
Yeah,
mitigating it
absolutely.
as best
Yeah.
you can. Do you guys you do two sets of gear? Do you guys do that or no?
We do not where I work currently, but it's definitely something that we're pushing for.
Yeah.
I do think that's a good idea. We have talked about getting like a set of like small, medium, and large gear, so it's not necessarily sized to you specifically, but at least it's a set of gear that you can throw on in the meantime while your gear is being washed.
Yeah, man, I feel I'm very fortunate. We're pretty forward thinking. We have two sets of gear. They just started. We use Lion, and they have that red line, which I don't know if you're familiar with that style of turnout gear, but all the Velcro's red, and so basically, if you were to see red, you would know that they weren't buttoned up, all the way to help prevent some of that exposure. You ever are you like a winter sports guy
I
at all?
am, yeah.
So you know how like a snowboarding or ice fishing coat's got that little like skirt on the inside with the
Oh,
elastic?
yeah. Hmm.
That's what our coats have too, and it's to prevent stuff from coming up into your coat from
That's really
underneath.
cool.
So
Yeah.
a lot of guys, I will say, a lot of guys hate that coat, and I don't know. It's an athletic
Well,
cut,
I'll tell you, based
but
on like a snow, jacket, it's not the most, you got that elastic around you, and it's not gonna feel that great. But, you know, I'd rather have, that's the point of wearing it when you're out snowboarding, so that you don't get the cold and everything up there. It's the same thing with, this soot and smoke and everything getting up there. I can see why that'd be beneficial.
yeah, to be honest, and I'm not sponsored by Lion or anything, but I actually really I like it. I think I'm one of the very few that likes it's. So it's a tighter athletic cut, and that's the reason it's supposed to stop. The extra as much as it can. It's supposed to stop in places like your cuff, your neck, up on your waist, your boots. It's the same thing. There's an elastic thing that goes around your boots as well. It's some pretty interesting gear, for sure,
Wow.
and it's a lot tighter. But I don't know. it's definitely something to check out. And I don't think I mean, it's exclusive to Lion, but I'm pretty sure that there's other manufacturers that are doing things like that now, in an attempt to be smarter about it.
Yeah, I mean, patents only last so long, right? So
Right?
everybody steals it from each other,
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah. They come on. Nobody owns anything in the fire service anymore. You make it, you paint it black over red, you put diamond plate on it, and then everyone else makes the same thing. That's pretty much the progression of fire service inventions almost every time. So, well, I really appreciate all the talk about your foundation that you're part of, some of these little hints and tips for cancer prevention, and
Yeah, I just got one last thing. So back at the fire station, so the IARC actually just reclassified firefighting as a class one carcinogenic profession. Basically, what that means is that we're ranked as the same as a coal miner now
oh
because of the different carcinogens that we get exposed to. So basically, what that means is if you get diagnosed with cancer, it went from maybe you got it from the job to you probably got it from the job. So because of that classification allows different things to happen. And actually the second leading cause of getting cancer within the fire service is actually diesel exhaust. And what is right next to our living quarters is our bays with all those vehicles. So we've been promoting for the last few years now of any type of ventilation system within the bays, whether it's a Plymaven or a Magna Grip or any type of those ventilation systems to make sure that we're not tracking in, well, the mufflers and everything are pushing it onto our gears because our gear racks are right there and they're folded up. So in that groin area, that's where all the diesel exhaust and everything's collecting. And then B, you're in and out, of the bays and all the time. So you have diesel exhaust and whatever else is particulates are floating in the air that could be tracked into where we sleep, where we eat, on the tables that we eat from. So it's really important to make sure that we're, ejecting that diesel exhaust properly.
yeah. What do you know? And I hate to put you on the spot. Do you know with diesel exhaust fluid? I know that that's becoming more commonplace. I think for apparatus or really just big trucks in general, right? Do you know if there's a correlation of either that being an accelerant or deterrent? I think for the exhaust in terms of like carcinogens and that kind of nature on your gear. Do you know anything
Well,
about that? I'm just asking.
so
I don't know.
yeah, I don't know the statistics personally, and I don't have them in front of
Yeah.
me, but I do know the fact that anytime that you're burning something, you're giving off, the unburnt combustion of whatever you're burning. So, I mean, you might be able to mask it with DEF fluid or whatever else that might be, invented, whether it's like a no smoke system where it's like a reburning of the smoke or diesel exhaust or whatever. They never come out to be zero. So that's why it's we're a proponent of the ventilation systems because then you don't have that problem. You're essentially sucking it in, pushing it all out.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I've definitely heard it'd be an interesting myth to get busted because I've heard people say things like, "Well, it's diesel exhaust fluid. It's not gonna do anything," and I've never really thought that made much sense. It's still exhaust, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it does something, but you're not rolling coal anymore, right? No, but there's still something out there.
Yeah, I just feel that whenever you're burning something, whether it's natural gas, diesel, gasoline, whatever it is, you're if it's coming out of a muffler, it's probably not the greatest, to breathe in.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we're not done, right? We're gonna segue and talk about more things. What I'd really like again, I'm gonna say it one more time. Shield23foundation.org. I've got it pinned in the chat. If you're listening later, check it out. Donate, support, whatever you can do to help even just expose, right? Even let people understand that you guys exist and that what you guys do. Share it, please. Get it out there. What they do is really incredible, and they help a lot of people. So, that being said, if you have any questions for Ryan, put them in the chat. If you really have anything else on Shield 23, we're going to keep talking about other things because you know, you're a fireman. And that's what we do. We talk fire stuff. We're going to talk some shop here. So we'll kind of jump into that. So one of the things I love asking questions about, and it's something that I wouldn't say I necessarily struggle with, but it's there and exists. And that's about being a multi-generational firefighter and what that kind of brings to the table in terms of how you conduct yourself, how you act, and obviously your story is on a whole other level, because of your dad's legacy and what you guys went through. But just talk through a little bit about what it means to be a second generation firefighter for you.
Yeah. I mean, my dad instilled those traditional values very early on. And actually, my dad and I never got to talk about the fire service at all because, I was 14 when my dad passed away. So I'll still remember this. I remember having a conversation with my mom and my grandpa, and I was about to have my very first shift as a firefighter, or maybe it was before the academy. And I'm like, what pants do I wear? What boots do I put on? I have no idea. I should know these things because my dad was in the fire service, but we never really got to have those conversations. But I hear stories of my father, being at this fire, or he was a good medic, or he was really good at IVs, or he was just a funny dude at the firehouse. So it was I have that aspect, but as far as being able to connect with a second generation, whether it's calls or being able to kind of vent and do things, I never really had that aspect of
Yeah.
being the kid of a firefighter. But I'll tell you, it is a really, really cool thing being a firefighter when my dad was a firefighter. And experiencing the same things that he probably experienced when he was young, or even today, as I've been around for 10 years.
Yeah. Do you feel have you gotten the opportunity to maybe connect with Gurney guys that worked with your dad and hear some stories and maybe like my dad didn't really necessarily talk directly about the job, right? Not
Mhm.
and if you get a chance, the first episode I did was with him, and that was probably the most him and I have ever really talked, about being a firefighter in that regard, and being just two firefighters talking. And I did, though, hear stories of him and things of that from other firefighters when I'd be around the fire station, or people that knew him. And have you gotten opportunities like that?
Yeah, especially growing up, I didn't have that mentor in my father. So really not knowing what the fire service was like, especially younger, making mistakes like a rookie would and should, and, not really knowing the ins and outs of the fire service. Jim Pelletieri from the Gurney Fire Department was a massive mentor for me. I still call him like my uncle to this day. And he not only is a great firefighter and great mentor, and is now a battalion chief, and uh, has been you know in charge of maydays and how to conduct yourself, and teaches at FDIC, and just a great all-around guy. But he also was able to sit down with me on just kind of like almost like a father-son level and be like, hey, your dad passed, he was my best friend too, let's get through this together.
Oh, that's incredible. And Pellet's awesome. I've only met him a handful of times. I actually skated. He played hockey. We had a men's league team, and he skated with
Oh
us for
yeah.
a little bit. And yeah, he's awesome guy. I've never gotten to have a real cool conversation with him. But man, how powerful is that? It's
Mhm.
that's the one thing I think I've been learning, that we speak the same language, right? A lot of people that have been grown up with it, and were front loaded those values, speak the same language, and uh, people that found the fire service by other means are learning the language at the same time, right? So it's almost like a broken English kind of thing, and
Mhm.
the I've found value now that I've been afforded a benefit by being around that stuff early, and I'm learning that I think we need to share those values more now in the fire service. The state of it right now, people need to share those traditional values exponentially more than we ever did before. because it's very easy to become disconnected to each other. We were kind of talking before, that it becomes difficult. We become disconnected from the job sometimes with everything that happens in our lives, and people that get it, that understand what we're supposed to be, have got to be the ambassadors for keeping that alive, right? Keeping those values, the values that your father has, right? And
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, like, our slogan for our foundation is for family and brotherhood. And that's actually on my dad's gravestone. So he used to say it all the time. And, family and brotherhood are, extremely important. If you can't really work with the guys that you work with, and I personally believe that you should be able to hang out with the guys outside of the firehouse. It's extremely important to, we almost need to kind of off gas ourselves sometimes when we go on a bad call, or maybe we're just exhausted. We worked, we had 6 calls at like from 10 p.m. on through the morning and all through the night. Sometimes you just need a guy to be able to just lean up against and be like, hey man, like, we're running through this together, and we have jokes back and forth, and just rely on each other. And we should be able to rely on each other's families as well. Because the wives, they all know exactly what they're going through too. When their husband is gone for 24 hours, they're going through the same thing as well. So everybody's going through very, very similar circumstances, and we understand that kind of life gets in the way sometimes. Maybe there's death in the family, or something's wrong with the house, or but we should all be there for each other. I think that family and brotherhood is extremely important for especially what we do and what we go through and what we experience.
have how long have you been? You're going to get married. You said next year, right? So you're
That's
engaged
correct.
right
Yeah.
now. Which,
Mhm.
congratulations, by the way. It's
Thank you.
awesome. And how long have you two been dating?
It'll be actually 4 years tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah.
How's that for small world? Anyway, so have you guys talked a lot about? I mean, she's been with you for 4 years now, so I'm sure
Mhm.
she's into the fold. She gets maybe some of the fire service stuff, but uh, uh, how have you had those conversations? Have you navigated some of those things? Right? Does she come from a public safety or public service background, or is she?
No, not at all. Her family comes from a very business-oriented background, so that's mainly 9 to 5, 8 to 4. They're home every night, able to kind of decompress as a family, and I think it was a tough transition for both of us. Me, having a serious girlfriend that relies on me, and then her not having somebody there for 24 hours. And and I had already been in the fire service for 6 years, but this was like the first time that I had a serious relationship, and it can be tough sometimes, especially when you're gone, or you're up all night, and something was planned the next day, and you're exhausted, and you can't necessarily you're dragging ass. You can't do anything the next day, and it can be tough, especially if you're planning stuff. So um, Lauren's been a rock star. She's really learned a lot, and my mom definitely helping out with in the beginning with kind of identifying what could go wrong and what probably has gone wrong, and just now we're just really there for each other, and we have a great relationship. So very,
That's
very
awesome.
fortunate.
My wife comes same thing. Well, so the only, I guess, advantage was both of my wife's parents were in hospitality, so they were used to living a life of working holidays, working weird hours, and those kinds of things. So her transition into the fire service world wasn't quite so harsh, right? My father-in-law still works 9 to 5, but like my mother-in-law was she was a chef. She is a chef. I mean, you don't stop being a chef, but you know what I mean. Like, so those. I mean, people go to restaurants not when not 9 to 5, like they're
Yeah,
going out to dinner
exactly.
at a certain time. So like it was it was interesting to see her kind of equate that lifestyle to our lifestyle in a way. But I realized and she's going to come on actually my next episode, but those conversations early on in a relationship to kind of establish, hey, this is what it's like, and it's a challenge for you as well as it is for me, being at work. And I'm just curious. Yeah, I was just curious how you guys
Yeah,
have
and
been
I
going through
definitely think
that.
that communication is definitely key, and I definitely lacked that for a long time growing up. I didn't know how to, express, that I just really liked my job, and this is just how it's going to be, and that doesn't come out great when you say it like that. So just being able to tell, because she had no idea what we do on a daily basis. She just thought what you see on TV. You go there, you sit around, you drink maybe, what you see on these, Chicago Fire or whatever it is, you're like what do you actually do? And then like it gets easier to understand when you let her know that, hey, I went on 15 calls today. I'm a little tired, or, I didn't go on a single call all day, but then, I had like 2 calls a night, and it was a perfectly timed call. So I'm just dragging today. I just need a little nap. And a lot of those things are really important when it comes to communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And hit over the head again when we had kids, and that changed everything again too. And like
Mm-hmm.
it's we just had yesterday. One of our senior guys retired, and big on family. I mean, huge. And he got up, and his speech was he talked to all of us, and the second half was he taught us one more time how to hold 2.5, which was hysterical. And to this day, I mean, I love Aaron Fields, but Steve Norman, man, him in that 2.5, unreal. He's the guy's a pro, and but he really, I mean, big on family, and talked about we can't do what we do without them. Like there's absolutely no scenario, right, without a support system behind you, and the sacrifices that your family makes too. And I think the reason I was asking, marriage and all that is it's hard at first. You have to have those conversations before you get to that point, and it sounds like you guys are doing a great job of communicating in that, and she's learned a lot. And
Well, we haven't gotten to the level of kids yet, so that's a
hey,
whole nother
dude,
tier on top of it.
no one's prepared for that. All right. My God, it's it's a whole different animal. You think not sleeping at work's hard? Oh my God. At least, well, actually, some patients are just screaming at you, but not like a kid. Oh my, you can't. Yeah, whatever. But either way, that's a whole other awesome chapter. So, um, I think a lot of people in the fire service, they're looking for belongingness. They're looking for culture. They're right trying to establish those things. And I think sometimes that search pulls away your passion for the job. What brought you here? Has that ever happened to you?
Well, actually, let me kind of reverse that for my beginning portion. So I was, obviously pretty depressed when my dad passed away, and it was kind of the fire service that helped me out through all that. So that's what drawed me to the fire service to begin with, was that family aspect. Now, as I've gotten a little older, and I've been in the fire service for a little while now, not a long time by any means, but a little while. It can kind of drain on you, especially with it. I almost want to say the modern day fire service, because my dad's generation of the fire service was very different than our generation of the fire service when it comes to family values, getting together. Um, I feel like that can kind of be lost in translation sometimes. But I feel like that's all department dependent. But I do feel like in general, we're kind of losing that brotherhood and family aspect. And I feel like that's extremely important, because that's what drew me to the fire service to begin with,
Yeah, absolutely.
and I definitely feel like it's our responsibility moving forward, to kind of change that. We should be getting together more often. We should be having fun with each other off duty. Um, I think that the individualized kind of competitiveness doesn't necessarily need to be there, but I do think that there's always going to be competition. I mean, we all come probably from a team sport background. That's what the fire service really is. There should be competitiveness. Otherwise, how do you get better? But we should be able to have a beer when our shift is over, or go to breakfast and actually hang out with each other and have a good time.
So would you say like that's probably the step one? There's a lot of steps to do that, but uh, right, that's probably what you would theorize as a way to encourage that family behavior starting to come back is little things like that.
Yeah, I think it's just small little baby steps. That's what happened when when I was young at Gurnee. Like I said, all of our families would hang out together. The kids would hang out. They'd be friends. The firefighters would all drink and have a good time. The wives would all hang out. The wives didn't want to hang out with us because they're sick and tired of us. They want to hang out with their friends. So it was just, it was a really cool experience. And I feel like there is a lack of that in today's fire service. I think that there's, a small group, um, small little pockets of people that do that. There's almost like, you know, like the common phrase is, if you have multiple departments or multiple stations in your department, each station is almost like a different department. It's kind of like that still when it comes to family, and I feel like we all need to just kind of get back together and enjoy each other's company, whether it's on the same shift or different shifts or what have you. At the end of the day, we're serving the same people, and we have to work together. And I think that realistically, if we're in this job, we're all like-minded anyway.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, yeah, we pretty much all. You're almost all called to the job for the same reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, or very similar reasons. Uh, so early in your career, you had mentioned Pelletieri. Were there any other people that influenced you early and set you off on the right path?
Um, Yeah, I mean, honestly, John Skillman was one of those people. He's on the board. He's our treasurer. Just kind of identifying, um, different aspects. Not necessarily doing your job. There's so much more to firefighting than just, pulling hose and knocking in doors and stuff like that. There's so much more to do it. And I guess he brought that like battalion chief admin kind of side to it, and kind of learning, the backstory, whether it's the union, how did the union get formed, or whether it's admin, why does admin have an idea of doing things a certain way, you know, identifying the reasons behind things rather than just kind of reacting. And that was a big thing that kind of resonated with me early in my career, because I had the 220. That was me when I was young. I was a, I guess, spitfire, I guess you could say. Like I mouthed off a lot. And until I kind of had that conversation with Pelletieri too, they're just like, hey, you're just a firefighter. Learn why these decisions are being made, and then you'll understand it a little bit better. And that really changed my attitude on a lot of different things. Understanding at the end of the day, everybody's trying to make things better. You're not going to be in a position to go backwards, and that's kind of like the thing that, everybody's like, what the hell is this guy doing? But at the end of the day, he wants what's best for the department. It might not be the right decision. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. So, but at the end of the day, it's in good faith. Everybody needs to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Bobby Halton was big on speaking of those things. A couple of his keynote addresses really hit on that, where we're all doing what we think is right in our hearts and minds, and Tanaka guy for that, is wrong on so many levels, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that we're here for each other, and like you said, we're very competitive, and I didn't play team sports, but I played the saxophone, and I'm an anomaly out of this whole thing. And firefighting became my team sport. So in a way, like, it was fun that
Mm-hmm.
I got to learn those things a little bit later in life. But I shared that Spitfire thing with you too. Like, when you're young and you kind of come in with a little bit of, hey, this is what we're supposed to be. It's sometimes hard to shut that off and listen. And it's the burden of passion, is you expect
Exactly.
things to be perfect's probably the wrong word, but you expect a high level of professionalism, right? And when it doesn't happen, it's really easy to get fired up when you set your standards so high. And
Yeah, and I think
yeah,
you're exactly right. And I think some things that kind of keep me grounded, especially earlier in my career, is I watched a lot of like YouTube videos of other fire departments in different areas of the country. One specifically that really resonates, actually two that really resonate with me. are on YouTube. One of them is called East St. Louis Firefighters Struggle. And you just really understand how really great we have it here in Lake County, Illinois. These firefighters, they barely had apparatus. Their station, collapsed in on itself. They'd laid off a significant amount of firefighters, and they go on a lot more trauma and fires than we do,
Yeah.
which we kind of wish we had. But and then another one is the Highland Park firefighter from Detroit, Michigan. I forget. I think that one was called like A Year on My Lid or something
Yep.
like that.
You're under my lid.
And that one was another phenomenal, kind of interesting pathway of what the fire service could be like in and around the country. And when I was at NIPSTA during Courage to Be Safe during the fire academy, we were fortunate enough to have Doogie McPherson come and speak. I don't know if you remember him. He was in the documentary Burn. He was the firefighter that was paralyzed from the waist down, and he came and talked about his experience within the fire service. His path to trying to eventually walk again, and his mistakes. And it was really, really cool to see because, especially younger in my career, I still do, I held firefighters to such a high standard. And it was really interesting seeing him, in a wheelchair and talking about his mistakes that he made. And it was a really humbling experience because, before that, I thought it was, you bragged about, what you did and, this and that. And then I quickly realized that it's okay to make mistakes. If you make a mistake, talk about it. Spread that information to as many other firefighters as you possibly can. Because if you made a mistake and if you're injured or whatever, then you don't want any other guy get injured and go through the same thing that you went through.
Absolutely. Another one, I can't remember what year. It was very recent, was Boyd Street, which was LAFD. And
Oh, yes,
the
that was
national,
unbelievable.
yeah, the National Firefighters Foundation put together a thing for that, and it's worth a watch. It's an incredible story.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that, that is unbelievable with the statistics and video cameras and everything that they had behind it. You almost feel like you lived it, and you cannot believe the fire conditions that they were in. It was unbelievable.
I mean, and that's I mean, this is probably fighting words for some people, but that's America's trunk company. Like LAFD does roof ventilation probably almost better than anyone in the country, and they're doing it all the time, and they do everything right, and something still goes wrong. And that video, it was really well put together and just totally humbling. Again, just keeping those things in your life and your career really keeps you on the right path, keeps you with the right attitude. And like you were saying, perspective. The Highland Park, Michigan, they were living out of a plywood trailer almost. That was their fire station behind it was like an abandoned warehouse, right? Like it was so
Yeah,
neat.
yeah. And then the guy that actually was interviewed, he said it during his probationary year. He and another guy lived in a tent outside for their first year because they weren't sure if they were going to make it or not.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where layoffs, and we're lucky that we haven't really experienced that up in this area, and those guys really went through a lot, and that just really shows the pride that they wanted to be firefighters. They went through horrible conditions and they still made it, and here they are today.
Yeah, and I'm not going to knock our area completely, but I think our area, we've kind of become ignorant to those things, and we forget what it's about, right? Because we're pretty well taken care of financially, beneficially, and I think we lose sight of some of those things, right? That man, some guys do a lot with way worse. My wife's from New Orleans, and there's a firehouse on, what is it, Frenchman Street, and it's basically the corner of like a five-way intersection. There's no way that this station, they have to park rigs on the street because they can't put them inside, and their living quarters is like maybe 400 square feet, if that, and like that's how they live. And we've had people that complain about, like, oh my God, we don't have our own room to sleep in at this station, so I got to hear everyone snore. Like, dude, their truck is parked out on the street. Like, like come on, like get some
Yeah.
perspective, right? And I, like you said, the values of firemen, we're supposed to take the hits. We're supposed to be those things, right? That's what we do. That's who we
Yeah,
are.
and I've been very fortunate that I found Wakanda, to be perfectly honest. And I think I mentioned before, I've worked. Wakanda is the seventh fire department that I've worked for in the county. I started off volunteer, and then was at a couple part-time departments to try and make ends meet. Eventually, I made the contract for Metro, and then I ended up going to Wakanda part time, and then eventually got hired full time. And it's been great. It's been a blessing. I definitely feel like they're a bit closer fire department than any other fire department that I worked for, other than the volunteer department I worked for. I feel like any volunteer department, those guys are extremely tight knit. But Wakanda's been good. They try and get together at least twice a year with getting all the families and stuff together at the firehouse, which is really, really nice to see.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like you said, uh, it was a culture shock for me coming from volunteer into traditional, because yeah, I mean it was, it, it's I guess it's easier because the volume of people that work for a part time department. So I have 40, I think 45 members on Lake Zurich, right? And there's cliques, right? And that's how most fire departments are, right? There's groups that align their values
Hmm.
together, and those cliques kind of get bigger and smaller as time goes on. But it's a percentage, right? It's if you think of it that way. In a volunteer organization, when you've got 150 members, the clique by percentage is still the same size, but that group is huge by comparison because of the volume of people. And it was such a culture shock. You have to kind of go find those people where, both of us had a very similar path, starting through volunteers, starting through, paid on call and that kind of thing. And you could connect with 15 people like that because you all got it and you were on the same path. Once you kind of got into that
Hmm.
traditional place and everyone's there and they're where they wanted to be, it's sometimes it's more challenging to find some of those people that you connect with along the way, and we can do a better job, I think, about that, and be more, I guess, more welcoming. I remember I asked my dad, and I'm sorry, I'm probably babbling, but uh, about feeling like I was on an island sometimes, right? And he was like, yeah, I mean, sometimes you got to live on the island, and like, but you got to have plenty of boat slips for people to visit, right? And yeah, like we have to kind of be that way. And I think that's the struggle when you're passionate. You don't always invite others. So I think that we will get there. I'm really happy to hear that you guys are getting that and that you're
Yeah.
having that
Yeah.
environment. That's amazing.
I definitely feel like we're starting to have that, and we're starting to make a lot of really nice decisions with trying to get together a little bit more off duty, and hanging out and actually enjoying each other's times. Because when you're only at the firehouse, being pent up together, and we're all essentially brothers, and eventually brothers fight. So sometimes it's okay to kind of let loose and meet each other outside, and just kind of relax and talk about other things other than the fire service. I mean, everybody has lives outside of the fire service. Whether you like video games or going hunting or whatever, everybody's got people that they can hang out with, especially in the fire service.
Yeah, I mean, when you're hanging out, like if you and the guys go to Top Golf, nobody's being like, "Oh, well, so and so didn't clean a bathroom in there." Like, what? That guy's a dickhead. You know what I mean? Like, there
Yeah.
there is none of that. Like, you're all just out having fun, and I think that that's one of the best ways for you to build culture and camaraderie is get people outside and meet up where there is no high pressure. There's no, hey, what the hell? I got to do all the dishes, or you're not cooking today. Like, nobody thinks about that stuff when you're hanging out. You're just
And
hanging
I do
out.
want to say Wakanda was actually great in including, probationary firefighters.
Oh,
I
awesome.
did not necessarily have that at some of the other fire departments that I worked for when I was younger. Maybe it was probably my my own fault because I didn't understand some things. When I first started, but Wakanda was. It seems like we're very inclusive to younger firemen, which is great to see that the fire service is kind of making that turn.
That's the norm, man. That's the way of the future in a good way, right?
Hmm.
You and our hiring issues, our short lists are making everyone really in administrative levels be like, oh my God, we got to be a place that people want to work. You always should have been a place that people wanted to work. I guess that's the positive that comes from this is now people are really actively trying to build those cultures. So again,
Isn't
commend
that
you guys.
unbelievable though? When we were
Oh,
testing, I remember specifically Glenview's test. There were like 500 or 600 people crammed into the Glenbrook High School cafeteria, all taking the same test. And I remember that they specifically said, we have no projected open spots for the next 2 years. And I'm like, there's 600 people here for no job.
yeah.
And then now you fast forward, I think we only have 14 on our list coming up. So we're probably going to have to retest in a year, depending on how many we hire. So, the turnover is real high right now because, I mean, if you really think about it, our fathers and, all got hired around the same time. It seemed like a lot of the fire departments around here went full time around the same time, 80s and 90s. And then it's just a cyclical cycle. In the fire service, we work 20, 30 years and then we're done. So right now we're at that 20 and 30 year mark. And it's just that cyclical cycle. We have new blood coming in. It's changing the culture. And, I think it's, it can be a good and bad thing, but for some reason, our lists are a lot smaller than they used to be, which it's interesting.
I will say, uh, the quality candidates are for us. We've been hiring stud after stud after stud, and it's awesome. Like even though the lists are smaller, there's no like, I don't know, like yeah, okay, there's a couple people that fall through the cracks in there, but for the most part, I mean, the people that are testing want to be firefighters. It's not, you know what I mean. It's not like whatever, I'll try it, or
Yeah.
whatever. Everybody that's showing up wants to be a firefighter. So
And I think my
organization,
dad, if I remember correctly, he was saying, because, the recession in 2008, a lot of people got laid off and, firefighting seemed like one of those steady jobs that you could do and get the paycheck and whatnot. So maybe that's where you saw that before. I could just be spitballing there, but, I remember him saying something like that. And that's where I think he kind of was drilling into me. Make sure that you give that 120%. Make sure that you learn the job, be good at your job, because at the end of the day, um, if you're lazy on the fire ground where you're needed, you could either hurt yourself or somebody else.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So who, and it doesn't have to be someone you directly know, who would you say best personifies the American firefighter?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, you could throw out, a few people. There's, gosh, I can't remember his name now. But Walton or even Jason Patton. A few of these, they're doing it in a different way
Yeah,
with comedy. I feel like, but with Patton specifically, he has his funny side, and bringing kind of some interest in the fire service, doing that stuff, and then he does his fire department coffee. Um, but I feel like he is one of the biggest advocates for mental health within the fire service. And he is a big proponent of peer support. And, I've heard actually specifically from a firefighter that I know that contacted his foundation for mental health. He talked to him directly because that's just what he does. He wants to be the face, and he lets you know that he was depressed and was suicidal and everything that he was going through. And it's really, really nice to see somebody open about something like that, because there are guys out there with some mental health, issues, I guess you could say. We've all been through some stuff. We've all seen, things that stick with us, whether it's, the 5-year-old that I did, CPR on, or, really bad car accident, or, you always have, things that you can reference, quickly whenever somebody says that. And, it wears on everybody differently. But to have somebody that, I guess, popular, and, he seems like a funny guy, and, doesn't seem like anything could happen to him just because he's so outgoing and, bubbly. For him to be so open about, mental health, and, say, hey, I will talk to you personally. Like, I've been through this. I will help you, instead of just sending you off to some shrink or something like that. He wants to help you out personally. And unfortunately, there's been a large number of firefighters taking their lives in the United States. But even in our area, I want to say there's been 5 in the last few years.
Yeah, and we're doing a better job, like you said. It's becoming normalized to have those conversations and to be open, not only about the fire ground and I made a mistake, but hey, I'm not all right. That's becoming a normalized thing, I think, within the fire service. In the same way that maybe our father's generation uh, would have supported guys through, like, I don't know, like divorce or something like that, right? Where that was probably more prevalent back then.
Hmm.
And not even a question. Hey, we got you, brother. We'll take care of that stuff, right? Or I was sick when I was 11, and everybody showed up, right? And the whole department essentially, it felt like, was there for me. And our generation now, I think, is recognizing that we need to be there for each other in a different way, and that's those individual things, right? I'm not all rights, the mental health part of it, and we're getting there for sure. Um, so, well, horrible segue in here, I. But currently, if you've listened to other people that have come on here and talked, or even just in your own department, because we all know that kitchen table talk, you know, is either really really happy or it's really really depressed. It's one way or the other, and it seems like people are in a state in the fire service where we're depressed about it, and that we think that the end is near almost. And how would you, if you were to triage like the fire department or the fire service, the American Fire Service, right? What would you give it? So black would be that it's dead, red it's dying, yellow it's injured, and then green we're going strong, right? We've got it going on. What would
Well,
you
I don't
rate it?
necessarily think we're not dead. We're not green, I guess you could say. Like, when people hear about the height of the fire service, you hear about like the 80s, and the pride and ownership, and really those guys are the forefathers. Even before my dad's generation, the generation before my dad, they were really what built the fire service to what it is today. And I think we're going through a transition from what that used to be to something new. And I think that something new is going to be really great. I think I think that it's going to be good, whatever it is. We're just going through a lot of growing pains. By no means are we dead. And I don't think the fire service will ever be dead, because we're a needed profession. And, if anything, they keep piling more and more on top of us. Back in the day, back in the 80s, it was only firefighting. I don't think they did much hazmat back then, let alone EMS. So, and I think we're becoming something different now. I remember there was an email going around about what could be changed within the fire service. It was sent by Lake County Fire Chiefs. They were interested about potentially making changes, or if you liked things. Do you like your salary? Do you like the schedule? Um, and I think both those answers are yes. I absolutely love the fire service schedule. I personally would hate if we switched to like a cop schedule, for instance, where you work midnights or you only work 8 hours. You know, to have that 24 hours is really beneficial in my mind. And then you have 2 days off. You have one day to potentially recover if you need to recover. And then you have an entire another day where you can do whatever you want. And a lot of other professions don't necessarily have that. And I think it's really, really important. So I definitely feel like there's change happening. I just don't know what it's going to lead towards, if that makes sense.
I feel you. I really do think that we're right there, and all it's going to take is one flick of the domino, and we're off and running. What do you think that domino is? What can we do to help as firefighters, as individuals at our own organizations? What can we do to kind of help keep that and make it positive? Make the next or the future of the fire service make it a positive thing?
Well, I mean, I guess like the old saying that, change is hard, and within the fire service, they always want change, but once change happens, they hate it, or whatever that statement is. I
Yeah, I
forget
know.
exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like we just have to be uh, we have to be there for each other. First things first. Just like how the fire service was there for me and my family when we were down, and uh, you know I was hurt, or everybody kind of came together, and we just need more of that. Instead of it being a sad time, let's just do it for the sake of being together. And I feel like that will really change um, the way that certain people think about coming to work, and uh, you know not necessarily talking to guys or whatever. We should be happy to go to work. It's a great job. I love this job.
Yeah, absolutely. Ah, I love it. Togetherness,
Exactly.
basically, right? That
Yeah,
that solves
for love
everything.
of family and brotherhood.
Bingo. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Uh, so I don't I started this whole thing trying to seek how to stay energized over long term, and so that, this last question kind of ties into that. But what would be what would you think is the most important element, to kind of end your career as positively as it began, right? What's something that you have to keep consistently over the course? And I know we're both in the same time period, and our end is decades away.
Hmm.
But early in your career, what are some things you've noticed or picked up from others, or that you feel yourself makes the most sense?
um, Honestly, I think that and it sounds extremely easy, and people kind of forget about it, is, taking care of your body, whether that's working out or whatever. I've seen firefighters towards the end of their career that, are limping and can barely walk, and, you can tell they're just strained, and it, like, I want to be able to retire healthy. We, as firefighters, get to retire relatively early compared to, the rest of the general population, and we should be able to enjoy that time when we retire. So just taking care of your body, whether that's working out or going to PT. I mean, I've started to notice within myself, I stopped working out for a period of time. I just out of pure laziness is what it really came out to, what it came down to. And I'm starting to feel the after effects from that, whether it's sore joints, or hurting myself on things that I really shouldn't be hurting myself on. It's just a standard lift or whatever it is. Whereas earlier in my career, I focused on working. I'm big into working out when I first started, and when we worked in Antioch together, I was down in the gym all the time with Orion and a few of those other guys.
Oh yeah, the meathead
And
crew.
that's right.
I was there,
So,
man. I feel you. Or what was it, Bro Tanks? That's what it was. That's
yeah.
yeah, I remember.
So, I kind of lost that, and I'm starting to realize the effects of not doing those same things anymore. And I'm feeling it in my shoulders, and, and a lot of the joints and my back tightness. And there's obvious ways to fix that. I just need to make the steps towards that. And I think that, I feel like that's kind of a generalized problem within the fire service. We're really good when we're young, but then we reach that 10 to 15 to 20 year mark, and we're like, like, I've been doing this long enough. I can, it's like second nature to me. And then you realize, a few years, your muscles start to atrophy, and you're not as good as you were doing things as you used to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Keeping up, it's like what is like discipline, right? Pretty much having the
Hmm.
discipline to keep up with things. Uh, cool. Well, I'll kind of transition into the end here. I want to give one last opportunity, and there is a delay with our chat. So if there's anything else you got for Ryan, otherwise I'm going to kind of roll into the end here of our chat, which I've really enjoyed. Uh, Thank you again for coming and sharing Shield 23, right? And sharing your story, and just chatting with me, because that's a good time anyway. I enjoy it
No,
regardless.
seriously, I really appreciate you letting us come on this platform, and letting you, or let me kind of tell my story about how I started and why the foundation started. Because I feel like you can only read so much on our website, and to hear a personal aspect of the story, um, it kind of drives home a little bit more than just reading something that you see. Because you kind of put a face behind, what is out there and what could happen. And yeah, I feel like more people need to kind of understand that cancer is out there. So, and we all need to help each other. And, my foundation is a way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. If anyone wanted to get a hold, so we've got your website up here. If anybody wanted to get a hold of you personally, how could they do that?
If they wanted to get a hold of me personally, I'm in charge of all of our social media. So if on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, anything like that, you can direct message and ask specific questions, or you can email us at awareness@shield23foundation.org. And either myself or one of our board members will be able to direct it to me, and I can answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for watching live, and appreciate all the support, and hopefully whatever support you guys throw Ryan's way and Shield 23. And little thing for actually my next week is going to be with my wife, so that'll be kind of interesting. I got to get another camera. I got to figure that out. But either way, again, thanks Ryan for coming on, and thank you guys for listening.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Have a nice night, everyone, and we'll see you around for the next one.